Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Reverend Ayliah Cannon. I am not the minister of this church. However, I am a UU community minister, and I enjoy giving my time here as much as I possibly can. December is a time of celebrations. There are at least a dozen or more celebrations which we could have this month. Personally, I'm looking forward to a celebration happening tomorrow. It's Chocolate-Covered Anything Day. Just in case I'm on anyone's Christmas list out there. And this weekend, on December 21st, is the winter solstice. At approximately 4:29 a.m. in the morning on the 21st, the northern hemisphere will be tilted the furthest from the sun, creating the shortest day. In ancient times, people were an agricultural society, and they would see the days becoming shorter and the sun rising lower in the sky, and they thought the sun was dying. And as an agricultural society, they relied very heavily on the sun, so this scared them quite a bit. But they thought if they held a great ritual, that they could save the sun, and it would come back to them. Of course, as the days lengthened after the ritual, they thought it had worked. The return of the sun was always seen as a symbolic victory over darkness. It's funny, but in nature, everything is always changing. Change is really the only thing that ever remains the same. Times change, people change, governments change, and we're going to be changing soon too, in January. Things are going to change a lot, possibly. Hopefully not. There is a constant ebb and flow between justice and injustice, hope and concern. Many of the celebrations this month acknowledge the joy, the peace, and the community which we have here right now. The spark of the sun reappearing on the day after the solstice reminds us the sun will rise again. And like the ancestors believed, there will be another victory over the darkness. Last month, there was a time to mourn, and now there is a time to let go of the mourning, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time for love, a time for strong dislike, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. A time to embrace a future which we can shape together. Come, let us worship together.
I'm about to tell you my own personal story about perseverance, since that is our topic today. We often set goals for ourselves, and sometimes we achieve them. Things turn out exactly the way we want them to. For most of us, the outcome is not as satisfying as we might want it to be. When that turns out exactly right, then we are on top of the world. As I mentioned last week in Joys and Concerns, it's been 26 years since I quit smoking. Talk about perseverance. I'm going to tell you the story. My story begins waking up one morning and having a coughing fit that was so bad I couldn't catch my breath. That day was the day that I decided I was going to quit smoking. I had no idea how hard it was going to be, nor how I was going to proceed. At that time, we didn't really have much of an internet. So I went online and I asked Jeeves. Anybody remember Jeeves? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Jeeves suggested that I should contact the American Cancer Society. And as luck would have it, they had a class that was just starting on how to quit smoking in about a week. I signed up. I thought, what do I have to lose? While waiting for the class to begin, I happened to see a movie called Dead Again with Kenneth Branagh and Andy Garcia. Oh, somebody's seen this one. Branagh plays a detective who's trying to solve a cold case in which he has to go to an assisted living facility to talk to Andy Garcia's character. And Andy Garcia's character was a cancer patient. He had a stoma. And for all of you, it's that little thing that goes into your neck so that you can cover it up to talk. Otherwise, you have to use it for breathing. And he asked the detective, Branagh, for a cigarette. Branagh lit it up, gave it to him, and he took the cigarette and stuck it right in the stoma. Ooh, that was it for me. I knew. I have never seen anything like that in my life. I was so afraid of the damage of smoking, I was bound and determined to quit smoking forever. The smoking class started about a week later with around 15 to 20 people. We did a check-in and talked about our motivations to quit. About the third night of class, the facilitator brought in a woman, older woman, who had a stoma. And she had to put her finger over her stoma to talk. And she kind of sounded like this. That even freaked me out even more. The very same night, the class set a quit date to stop smoking as of December 5th, 1998. So at midnight, that night, we were supposed to stop smoking. As time passed, our class size shrank. People were coming to class, but one by one, they started admitting they were cheating. I was determined not to smoke. We talked about the psychological effects of coping with them, including substitutes for something to hold on to hold in your mouth. I remember one guy saying quitting heroin was much easier than quitting smoking. I tried different things and settled on drinking straws. I found that if I cut a straw in half, it was about the size of a cigarette. I would chew on those. As time, Wellbutrin had just hit the market. It helped with depression, anxiety, and had a side effect that curbed smoking addiction. I got my doctor to prescribe it to me, and it worked. I chewed and sucked on straws for 11 months. I got some looks out in public because I always had a straw hanging out of my mouth. It may have looked a little weird, but eventually I stopped chewing on straws altogether. This is my story of perseverance. Today, this is the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do in my entire life. Quitting smoking, overcoming the addiction of smoking has helped me realize that with the help of others, I could achieve anything I wanted to. I could achieve and be successful in my life. My perseverance shows that you can achieve anything that you put your mind to. All you need are the proper tools and the love and support of the people that surround you. Thank you for listening.
There is something very magical about Christmas. It tends to inspire a lot of different feelings and emotions in all of us. And quite frankly, I came up with the idea for this message back in November, right after November 5th, when we woke up to a very different reality. So I decided to combine that with a Christmas message and call it Perseverance. And I took some inspiration from different sources, and one of them was from the Wright Brothers at Kitty Hawk. In 1892, Wilbur and Orville Wright opened their own bicycle sales and manufacturing shop in Ohio. They had already spent several years in machinery shops developing mechanical skills. And in 1896, they were reading stories in the news about experimentation with gliders, and they were particularly inspired by the fatal accident of one of those aeronautical experimenters. So they started doing their own aeronautical research. And in 1900, they went down to Kitty Hawk and began experimenting with manned flights. After 3 years of limited success with a powerless glider, they decided to add an engine. And on December 17, 1903, they accomplished the first powered flight. The first one lasted 12 seconds. After 8 years of research, experimenting, and trials, their success only lasted 12 seconds. They would fly 3 more times that day, achieving much more control, greater distances, longer times. But history always remembers that first one, 12 seconds. It's hard to imagine that after all that work, success could only last for 12 seconds. Could you invest 8 years of your life trying out ideas, doing all this research, so the world would only remember you for this brief amount of time? It's hard to imagine that all the work that we put into something, and then history only remembers a short fragment of that effort that we put into it. Consider how long an athlete trains for an event like the 100 meters, that it's over in less than 12 seconds, but they spend a lifetime preparing for that. But I think it's about hope. Perseverance requires hope. And Christmas is about hope. When we light that candle, when we see that spark of sunlight coming up over the horizon, we know that change is going to come. Perhaps one condition of creating hope is the existence of previous successes. Once we have accomplished one goal or overcome one obstacle, we believe that further achievements are possible. Can you remember something you achieved? What if that accomplishment was small, or it took a whole lot of time and effort? Do you think this experience still creates hope? When I began my interfaith studies, I discovered a book called The Critique of Pure Reason. And to this day, I am still trying to absorb that whole book. It's not an easy read. It's by Immanuel Kant, and he is considered one of the inspirations behind American transcendentalism. He theorized that the belief in success required was only possible if a spiritual contribution was made to that belief. In other words, you had to have some faith in yourself. And if you could not make that spiritual contribution to yourself, then the only way that hope and perseverance was possible was what he called a posteriori, which means after the fact, or after the existence of a previous achievement. So the answer is yes. We can manufacture hope by changing our mindset. And once we have hope, we just need to hold on to it. Our history is full of examples of goals that took perseverance. For example, when slavery was abolished and people of color were allowed to become citizens, it still took another 100 years to really establish their voting rights. 100 years of minor successes, terrible setbacks, but it did happen. As UUs, we often turn to Martin Luther King Jr. as well as I do too. I find his writing so inspirational. But how often do we make the connection between the doctor's spirituality and his inspiration to persevere? Even if we don't believe in a supreme being, we still need to have faith in something. Perhaps it's just faith in ourselves. That's where it starts. And I believe holding on to this hope, we can be like the ancestors. We believe that the sun will rise again. A lot of people mourned the day after. They thought democracy was dying. Democracy is not dying. We may lose sight of it for a while, but it will rise again like the sun. And I believe holding on to this kind of hope is what's going to get us through the next 4 years. A month ago, when many uninformed people voted in support of what could become an authoritarian government, I was very worried. A few months ago, I discovered an author called Heather Cox Richardson. Perhaps some of you are familiar with her. The authoritarian government supports the idea that people are inherently unequal. Authoritarianism doesn't tend to resonate with us because it is anti-pluralistic. And it promotes the idea of a social hierarchy and argues that spending money in support of civil rights is a waste of tax dollars. They believe that liberalism undermines the traditional family values which we hear espoused by Christian nationalists. And in Trump's 1776 project, we saw how he rebuked the idea of the 1619 project, saying that America had lost sight of the true values of the Declaration of Independence, that where it says all men are created equal, he left out all women, all racial minorities, all LGBTQIA people. The 1776 report actually says that these people do not belong in political power, that they are weak and cannot think for themselves. I have a message for them. We are not weak. But this was something that I discovered in Heather Cox Richardson's book, Democracy Awakening, which I have been reading. And it has been very, very eye-opening. As I read her book, I thought about how easily it was to walk into a voting booth, push a few buttons and make your choices and change the world. 12 seconds. Do you think it takes 12 seconds to enter your choices in a voting booth? Maybe less, if you know who you're voting for. So maybe that's where we start. We make it 13 seconds and 14 seconds in someone's mind. So when they go in, they don't automatically hit the button. They think about that button they're hitting. One quick little action. Perhaps more quick actions can also change the world and create hope, like sharing kindness and compassion at this time of year. What else can we put in our spiritual toolbox that will help us not only survive the next years, but have some peace of mind? Perseverance. Persistence is a result of habit. In Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, The Oversoul, he talks about our faith comes in moments. Our vices are habitual. Well, I have decided for myself, and perhaps you will too, my vice is going to be to persevere, to not give in, and to cause as much good trouble as I can. What else can we put in that toolbox? Courage, conviction, integrity, patience. How about a few of life's lessons from history? If you consider life a journey, then you must also accept that every journey may face a little bit of road construction. Another lesson that I have taken away from transcendentalism myself is an optimism for the human potential. I believe humans can achieve anything. Yes, they can achieve bad things, but they have the potential to change and make many good things happen as well. What inspires each of you? When I think of tenacity and stick-to-itiveness, one of the most inspirational stories that I can think of is about Selma, Alabama. I have always been fascinated by the story of the Unitarian Universalist minister, James Reeb, who was murdered in one of the marches at Selma. He lost his life taking a stand for a cause which was not really affecting him if he didn't choose it to be. He was not black. He did not live in Selma. He lived in Boston with his wife and children. He was a community minister like I am. There were 3 attempted marches, if you're not aware, from Selma to Montgomery. The first one, where he was murdered, became known as the Bloody Sunday. It's the one that most people are familiar with. The second one was stopped because of an injunction. It didn't get very far. The third one was finally protected by federal officers, and it ended at the steps of the Capitol building. And that was where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "How long" speech, a true speech of perseverance. I'd like to offer you a glimpse of that speech if it's not too familiar with you. As he spoke to 8,000 marchers at those steps, he said, "We have walked through desolate valleys and over trying hills. Some of us have slept in the mud, and we have endured chilling rains. Our bodies are tired, and our feet are somewhat sore." And he went on to say, "We are on the move. We will march on segregated housing. We will march on poverty. We will march on the ballot boxes. The road ahead is not a smooth one. There are no broad highways that will offer us easy access to quick solutions, but we must keep going." Now, I know you're asking, this is what he asked the crowd. I'll ask you in a little bit, though. I know you're asking, how long? Not long. Truth crushed to the earth shall rise again. How long? Not long. No lie can live forever. How long? Not long. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. How long? Not long. Martin Luther King Jr. was inspired by another Unitarian minister, Theodore Parker, when he wrote this. And when I thought about what happened last November, I asked myself, how long? Not long. Some of you may have been knocked down by life. I've been knocked down. Boy, I could spend the whole hour talking about that. So it's hard to imagine resilience. And for some of you, perhaps the idea of perseverance sounds like a foreign language because we don't know what each other has faced, and we have all faced our own challenges. But I want to give you another message of hope within this one. If your flame has dwindled, if you are tired of fighting, and you know what? You're in the right place. Another necessary tool to put in your spiritual toolbox, a supportive community. Here at UUFN, I know we are building a beloved community. It's a long-term project. It's going to take a lot of work. But when the noise is too loud out there, we can put our work here. Community is like a beautiful rose opening. The more love you give to it, the more beauty it gives back to you. And when you put love at the center of your work and your life, your community gives hope back. Hope is transformative. Love is transformative. When we give generously from our chalice of compassion, community is transformed. And there is always room for one more person in our beloved community. So let's all stick together. Perseverance is hard. It's not going to be easy. But together, many hands make lighter the work. I know you've probably heard that cliche saying, but right now, it couldn't be more applicable. So let us make perseverance a habit, a vice that we are unwilling to give up. Let's cause some good trouble by not giving in. In Emerson's Oversoul, he also says that one cannot exist without the many, and the many cannot exist without the one. I choose to believe that one community cannot exist without the many hands doing the work, putting in the love, and persevering. How long, UUFN? How long, UUFN?
Not long.
One more time. How long?
Not long.
Thank you.